Hello, welcome to the Scrum Master Power Hour. I am Patty, the founder of Agile Mindset Consulting. I am passionate about helping Scrum Masters, especially those that are new on their journey, learn the ropes and find their groove in their role. This meetup started a year ago last week, so we just hit our year birthday, and it's designed to bring people from all over the country, all over the world together to help each other, lean on each other to work through the challenges of this role, and there are many. So once a month, I like to bring in a guest speaker for a fireside chat. And those of you that have been to one of these before, we, meaning myself and the guests, have an open and honest conversation. I only invite people in here that I know, that I have a relationship with, that I trust, and I know who they are inside. So I will let her introduce herself in just a moment, but we are here to talk about one of the challenges today of management. So how do we deal with managers in an agile environment, as well as how do we not fall into that manager role ourselves? Because the idea is that we become a coach and not fall into the trap of telling people what to do, which is super hard. All right, so Karen, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself and then we will get into the meat of the discussion.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. So my name is Karen Weeks. I have several different hats in life. One is as an HR leader. So I'm the head of HR, chief people officer for a fancy title at a company called Order Groove. We are in a tech startup stage, and there's one of my cats, which is also one of my hats in life. Two cats and a dog, which I'm sure will make various appearances as we get especially closer to dinner. So in my HR role, I work for tech companies mainly, so have worked with a lot of Scrum Masters in my career. Order Groove is a subscription company, so we specifically help retailers and brands build subscription programs. So Amazon Subscribe and Save, but directly for the retailer. So go to PetSmart.com, buy a bag of dog food, you get it every 30 days, you sign up for auto ship. That's Order Groove's technology on PetSmart's website. And that's just sort of like the simplest real life example that I like to share. So throughout my whole career, I focused a lot on career development and really helping companies build cultures, which I also think is part of the overlap with Scrum Masters in the sense of we are really trying to figure out how to help other teams be amazing. And then the other hat that I wear is I started my own coaching business a few years ago where I help people either navigate their careers and sort of figure out what they want their careers to be. I also help new managers help become actual people managers versus just the amazing individual contributors that they were before. And I help entrepreneurs build their teams. So sort of fractional HR for teams of like 2 and 3 kind of stages. So again, it all ties back to the years of HR of helping people with their own development and then helping build amazing companies and teams. And I'm so thrilled to talk to this group because it is a very unique role in some companies, and I'm thrilled to sort of help you navigate that.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. I am excited to have you here for so many reasons, which we'll get into in just a moment. As a lot of you know that have studied the Scrum framework, a manager is not part of the Scrum framework, yet many companies have this role within their org structure. So how do we successfully work with these folks, and how do they successfully work with us? That's what we're going to tackle today. So before we get to that though, and I do have on my big screen over here some talking points, but I do want the group to know that this is really an organic conversation. Karen and I, we'll talk about our story and our history, but we haven't like rehearsed this. We haven't practiced this. So this is like on the fly conversation. Eventually the conversation will evolve and we'll forget y'all are there and we'll just keep talking. And we want you to know this is open and honest conversation. So we want to give you the behind the scenes of what really goes on with those other folks that you may interact with, but you don't quite know what they do or how they fit into Agile and Scrum. But we will have maybe about 20 minutes or so of question and answer for you to then follow up with mainly Karen, but if you have something to ask me as well, I'd be happy to answer that question. So let's talk about how we know each other. And I've been dropping little breadcrumbs to people ever since I announced you were coming. And for so many reasons, I'm excited that you're here. And but there's also a lot that I'm going to share with you that you haven't heard me say before.
Yeah.
How grateful I am for our relationship. So Karen and I know each other since January of last year. And it feels like, when I think about it, it feels like many years. And I think part of it is because I've had a lot of career milestone changes since that point. I've come a long way, and I'm in a completely different place than I was when I met you.
Yeah.
We met each other in a business coaching cohort. So at that time, just for the context of the people in this room, because I've talked to people about this a little bit, but I do the Scrum Simulator 4-month cohort. And at the time when Karen and I met, this was a 2-day course. And I decided that just wasn't enough to serve my clients. It was kind of like the CSM class where you do the 2-day thing and then you leave, and then what? So I joined this business coaching cohort to help me pull this apart and re-put it back together to something that was much more valuable. So Karen met me when I was in this process, trying to figure out, what do I do? How do I build this thing? And then, of course, how do you market and sell it, build the brand around it, et cetera. So I'm trying to figure out where to go with this, but in one of those weekly meetings, and at the point we didn't know each other that well, you were talking about how you use Trello and you were using it. And then you made this offhanded comment, and you may not have even realized it, right? At the time, it wasn't a big deal to you. You just said it. You're like, but I'm not a Trello ninja like Patty. And I wanted to tell that story because that passing comment that you made fundamentally changed the course of my business.
Oh my gosh.
It helped me build a brand around this thing that I call the X factor. And being a Trello ninja at that time, it was something unique. Now a lot of people use Trello, but it was something that I was like, wow, this is a skill that I have that other people don't. Let me start talking about it. So I put content out there. I did a workshop, which was called, what is my X factor? Some of you in the audience may have participated in this. And I learned to help people tell their story. Because when I became a Scrum Master, I fundamentally had a challenge telling my story. I didn't believe I was worthy enough of this role. So that passing comment helped me build out a brand, right? And there was so much that happened after that. Helped me build out products, services, and helped other people, possibly in this room, own their story.
Mm-hmm.
And this was all because of you.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm going to pass it to you and what's your reaction to that, Karen?
That's all. Just, no big deal. Yeah, I think it's amazing because that's why I really love being parts of groups like we were in, or what I think is so special about this group that you've created, or being part of an internal team, wherever your community is, where we all bring something so special, even if we're the only ones who do that thing. And so whether that is, especially in startups, I'm usually one of the only HR people, or people might see HR as one thing and I try to brand it as something else. Or unless you're part of a really large organization, you may be the only Scrum Master, or maybe you are Scrum Master and 7 other things because a company doesn't know really what to do with a role like that yet. And yet we all bring something so valuable to the table, and we're able to influence and impact others in ways that we don't even know, just because we're all coming together in this shared space. And these sort of online community, especially online, since we're all online anyway, I think just brings so many amazing people together, because you never know what you may say or what the way you may encourage someone or cheer someone on. You literally can change their perspective on something. And I think that's why these groups are so special. So it just means the world to me that you said that, because all I want to do in life is help people. And that's why I'm in the roles that I'm in. And that's why I started my coaching business. But to know that that had that impact is amazing. And watching you go through this journey, when I think about all of us from that cohort and how much has changed for all of us in 18 months, it also goes to show, yes, it takes a lot of hard work, and folks that are making career changes and are trying to find their place in this world, it takes a lot of work, but it is possible. And then you look back and go, oh my gosh, look at everything that just happened.
Yes. Yes. Well, I wanted to publicly share that. And that's why I was excited to bring you in, because I want people to know that regardless of what they see on LinkedIn, what they see me doing, what they experience, there are a lot of people in my life that have helped me get here. This is not something I did on my own. And that small thing, because I was in a group of like-minded people who have goals to make big things happen, right? Because I'm around those people in this cohort, that passing comment, I saw it as an opportunity and I took it. And, just to let everybody know that the person that's leading that cohort, she came up with Scrum Imposter Syndrome for me. She came up with Scrum Master swag. She came up with all of these things that I've kind of taken and run with. And now they've become my brand. Now they've become me and who I am and what I stand for. And everything that I do and I put out there is in alignment with those things. But to me, I was so nervous to own them at first because they're quirky. And like, what corporate person that works for a big bank uses Scrum Master swag or like Scrum Imposter Syndrome? But it resonates with people. And I said, screw it. I'm just going to keep owning it. And it's turned into this bigger than life thing and has helped people, and people can relate to it so much that I'm like, how could I not continue to own it?
Yeah, when you find your authentic way of telling your story or working with others or how you best influence people, like I work as a coach very differently than the way other people work as coaches, but that's my secret sauce. Or when I think about HR for a company, I'm not, I mean, I am compliance related because obviously it's my job. I don't want to put any companies at risk, but I will help you find and navigate the gray because I want to do what's right for the business and the team, as long as we're not breaking any laws or anything. But there are plenty of other HR folks that are more or are less risk adverse or want to like really follow every compliance. I try to personally, I just try to find what's right for everybody, as long as we're not like doing anything extreme. But that's my brand within HR. That's my brand as a coach. And I think, especially in roles where you're influencing and working with others versus directly managing and directing people, I think that authenticity makes you stand out even more because, first of all, you'll be the most energized that way because you'll be authentic self. And so you'll really have the most impact because you'll be you. But also, I think it's what makes you stand out in the organization because they're like, oh, that's the person that tells it to me straight. That's the person that is going to pull this out of me or whatever your brand is. And I think that goes a long way.
And I would go into, I mean, people are always hesitant to say the companies, right? I'm like, you can go on my LinkedIn profile and see what company I'm talking about. I might as well just say them. I went into Wells Fargo and I was myself, this like kooky, crazy person that I play music. I was with the client. I'm like, oh my gosh, I go into my Scrum meetings and I play music and I have dance parties and I do these things and nobody fired me. And people are like, oh, wow, that's so interesting. How do you get your teams to trust each other so much? Because I do these things and I had to push myself out of my comfort zone. But it's through, again, being around these like-minded people like yourself, like all those other folks that encouraged me to push those boundaries safely and realize the fears that I have are in my own mind. I've never gotten in any trouble, like Zero. People loved it. So I kept doing it.
Well, and it's amazing what people are looking for when they don't realize they're looking for it. So yes, a company may have a more conservative, stodgy, old-fashioned brand, but that just may be like historical brand. Give them a chance to try something new and they may be all for it. And if not, that might be okay too. And that might be telling too, because maybe that's not the place for you too. So whenever I talk to folks about their career development, I focus a lot on you have to be in the right place for you. And I'm not saying like just up and quit like Jerry Maguire style, like, you can be responsible about it. But if you're in a place that doesn't fit who you are, I worked for a very large international consulting firm. Like they got bought by Deloitte. Like that was sort of the place that they played. And we had to wear, suits and nylons and call the owner of the company Mr. So-and-so. I was like, you are not, I'll respect you, but you are not that special. And putting me into some sort of like uniform does not make me fit in here at all. And so that's when I personally found tech industry, because that fit my personality so much better. For other people, that kind of structure is in that sort of hierarchy and clout, like that's really important. And there's no judgment either way, but you have to find the place that will celebrate playing music and doing the things that you want to do. And if that's not your current company, that's okay. Just you now know that, and then you have the choice to stay and conform, or to find a place that's a better fit for your authentic personality.
Maybe it's time to pivot to talking about command and control stuff. No, I'm just looking at my list here. I think some of the things that I wanted to say, and again, this is like, I'm just being my authentic self here. This is not rehearsed. And in thinking to some of my client calls that I had today and yesterday, I work with a whole bunch of transitioning teachers, people who are trying to pivot from that career to a Scrum Master career. And because I'm a former public school teacher myself, I understand their plight. And what I was saying today is, as a teacher, that environment is such a command and control environment. So as a teacher, you micromanage every second of the day. And if you don't, the kids will spin out of control and you can't get that control back. It's really hard. But on the flip side of that, right, we all grow up in that environment. So even though we may not like it and we complain about it and, our teachers are jerks, that translates to companies. Our managers are jerks. They want to tell me what to do. The flip side of that is we are comfortable with people telling us what to do. We are comfortable with being handed something and told exactly how to do it, because then we know we do it perfectly and we won't get in trouble or we won't get fired. Or again, thinking back to the school days, we won't get an F on our paper. So this is all related, right? We grow up this way and then we translate into our adulthood with the same tension. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be told what to do, but I don't know how to operate in an environment where nobody tells me what to do. It's super uncomfortable. So pivoting into, right, the corporate environment now, or the company environment now, where we have these managers, they are still somewhat in that role of managing people, telling people what to do and how to do it. But then throw Agile and Scrum on top of this. And in some cases, the company C-suite just said, we're doing this, right? Nobody had a choice. We're moving around the org structure, and surprise, you're now Agile. Here's a Scrum Master. Like, how do we adapt to this if we're so used to that structure and that order?
Well, to build on that too, is you think about often we want to help people. And especially if we know the answer, like we want to just tell them that 2 + 2 = 4, just say 4. That's all I need you to say. But often we have to help them, do 2 and 2 and count them. And what does that equal? And like, I'm making it very simple on purpose, but it's the whole idea of fishing for them or teaching them how to fish and all that, when it's so much easier to give someone the answer or so much easier to tell them what to do. But that actually isn't our role most of the time. Our role is to help them get to the answer or get to what they want to do. You know, so much of my role in HR is I actually am rarely the decision maker unless we are about to do something there where I need to throw down the red flag and be like, no, 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 please just do not do that. You know, it's the manager's decision to hire someone. It's the manager's decision to promote, to put someone on a plan, like any of the things that we may or may not want to do. Where again, unless I see like a real red flag where it's like, you know, danger, danger, I'm just helping them get to the best answer, and they're the ones that actually have to make the decision. Which there are so many times where I'm like, you're going to trip and fall. Yep, there you go. You fell. Okay, let me help you get back up. And what did you learn from that? But that's all I can do. And that's my role. I actually shouldn't do their jobs for them as much as I sometimes may want to. So I think that stepping back in those moments and being, how will I actually best help this person? Yes, I could tell them what to do in this moment and they'll either listen to me or they won't. But if I actually want them to grow themselves as a manager, or if I want them to grow themselves as a person, I actually need to help them through this moment so that they make a better decision next time, or they learn for the future. And so a lot of times I try to think through it that way. And I think roles like ours, where we are not the decider, we're not the manager, we're here to help others be their best. If you try as hard as possible, which is so much easier said than done, to think about the longer term goal of their work, their career, the product you're trying to release, whatever the thing is, helping them is actually a better service to them than just giving them the answer.
And it is hard.
Oh my God, it's so hard. You just want to look at them and be like, just do this. Or usually it's actually just, please don't do that.
Right, right. Well, I always bring up Jira. I don't know if you use Jira, but like like Trello, like those types of programs, and how as a Scrum Master, I use Jira because that's what I'm familiar with, but there's other ones. As a Scrum Master, you get the work in Jira, and then they're supposed to move the tasks in Jira right, in real time, so everybody knows where everything is at any given moment, right? And then, how do you entice people to do that?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the times it's, well, our metrics are going to be bad, or we're going to get yelled at because our velocity is going to go down, or whatever the numbers are, and that scares people. Right? That's again the cracking the whip, like you better get an A or else. But people are not incentivized by burn downs and by charts. Like, they need to understand the why.
Yeah.
And I know you're a coach and I'm a coach, and it's about coaching them to understand what problems are being caused by not doing that.
Yeah.
And once they can verbalize that out loud, okay, so now that we're all struggling with this, what should we do about it?
Yeah.
And getting the team to come to their own conclusions that they need to move their tasks in Jira.
Yeah. Yes.
But it's that patience that you need to have as a coach in order to hold up the mirror and say, what do you see? As opposed to, I see you're not doing this, do it or else. Because that doesn't work. Yeah. Right? You can't, I'm not a manager. I can't tell you what to do, but I know what you should do because it's hurting the team if you don't. Yeah. So can you give us any perspective on like that type of thing?
Well, and it's so interesting because going back to what you said earlier, if I put myself in the shoes of that other person, I actually don't want to be told what to do. Like, just do it because I said so. Ew, no. Like, none of us actually want to hear that. So when we sort of try to put ourselves in the other person's shoes of, okay, well, if I was doing the wrong thing in Jira, what would inspire me to do it right? And again, this is all very easier said than done, but There's a great book called Leadership and Self-Deception. I read it like 15 years ago. It's one of those really cheesy business novels, but it's not as bad as some of the other ones. And it's all about a new person joining the team and the teams that are really stressful times. And he's trying to motivate the team. And because it's this cheesy business novel, it even talks about like his relationship, and him and his partner have a new baby. And it's all about putting yourself in the other person's shoes and thinking about, how can I communicate this in a way that from their perspective might be valuable, might be impactful, might actually help them. And so I think my biggest piece of advice for folks that are not managers, and actually it doesn't behoove you to tell someone what to do as much as you may want to, is to think about what would motivate me if I were in their shoes. So Salesforce is another great example. Like, salespeople hate updating Salesforce until they get the win and they can close the prospect out, because to them it's an admin task. But for a company, it's driving forecasting, it's figuring out revenue, it's figuring out pipeline flow. Like, it's so beneficial. So if you help folks understand how that data is being used, or why the timeliness of the data is helpful, or maybe it is impacting the product roadmap. Like, if it's taking longer to work through a sprint or through different tickets, or you're able to go faster, or whatever's happening within the Jira board, that only helps a company think through, oh, can we then adjust the roadmap either way, which may impact customer promises, because you may be sharing the roadmap with customers, or you may have promised some client that something's going to be done by a certain time, and you then have to change that communication depending on it. So it may feel like it's insular to the work you're doing, but often a company is using something like that for so many other reasons. So giving as much context and the why and how it's used and those things, well, what's going to drive behavior. And then if that's not happening, then it's a partnership with the manager. Again, not your job as a Scrum Master, but a partnership with the manager to figure out why that person is still resisting. It's a skill issue, it's a performance, like there could be other things that are going on.
Yeah. And I always come back to Jira because that's the most obvious example, because I know it seems so darn simple, just move the tasks.
Yeah.
But if you can really, and especially during a retrospective, help the team have the conversation. How is it impacting us or stressing us out or causing us to miss our deadlines or whatever it is? Because ultimately it's negatively impacting your health.
Mm-hmm.
So always relating it back to the person and what's their why. You don't want to be stressed out anymore. Well, maybe as a team we can do something to alleviate that.
Yeah.
And knowing where things are at all times, because you're dependent on the next pass off or whatever, is helpful.
Yeah.
Well, but it's having that open, honest, transparent conversation where people can share those things. And that's a psychological safety thing.
Yeah. Well, and it ties back to, maybe there's actual feedback loop. So is there something that we are not thinking through? So we aren't the engineers, just like we're not the managers, we're also not the engineers. So is there actually something we're missing that could help improve a process, that could help think through something, relabel something? I don't know, like it could be a million different things. So to your point, creating the safety to have these conversations versus it feeling accusatory or do this because I said so, might actually get you feedback that will help you better influence a team or think through the process or whatever things that you actually want to do. So it just helps create the dialogue of that we are in a trusting adult professional relationship here. I'm trying to help you, but I also want you to help, be a part of this. So if this isn't working, why isn't it working? And maybe we can come up with a solution that I wouldn't have seen because I'm not in your shoes.
Tough stuff.
Yeah.
This is the stuff that they don't teach you in your your CSM class.
So just to turn the tables on you for a second, can you think of a time where
no,
and if you don't, it's totally fine.
No, Karen, this is the whole part. Yeah. This is the whole reason for this. I've never had a person turn the tables on me. This is a first. But go for it.
This is my action-oriented nature as a coach.
Sure. No, totally.
Is there a time when you can think where you did help influence someone to do something differently? And like, why do you think it worked?
There's so many, right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a specific person in the company that I just I can't even look on my LinkedIn profile, the company that I just left a few months ago. I was, an Agile coach there over about 13 Scrum Masters, and, a mix of technical and non-technical Scrum Masters. And, as we talked about last week, which you weren't here, but as we talked about last year, they both have different challenges. They both have different strengths, and they both have different weaknesses. But because of my non-technical nature, a lot of times non-technical Scrum Masters gravitate towards me. And for me, I was having a lot of trouble getting this group of people together because they were all on different pages. The previous coach was command and control. So I had to dispel that negative about coaching and bring this group together. So I just started putting office hours up on the calendar, and I would just sit patiently and wait for people to show up and wait for people to show up. And the non-technical Scrum Masters are the ones that would show up. And I would talk to them about the things that I was an expert in, non-technical things, the 5 dysfunctions of a team, right? How to build psychological safety with people by understanding human behavior. I would just constantly have conversations with them. And, at first they looked at me like I was strange, but we're supposed to talk about the backlog, and we're supposed to talk about metrics. And I'm like, no, this is the important stuff. I know it is. So I'm going to keep talking about it. And I started teaching them my techniques, my weirdish techniques to help build psychological safety and trust on a team. And, at first they think I'm weird, but and they started testing these things out, and they started working for them. And they're like, Patty, I can't believe that this stuff actually works. One of my techniques, right? And the reason I'm telling this story, Karen, is because I had to own this stuff. This is not traditional stuff that people do in corporate America. This is not traditional stuff you will learn about in a CSM class or any other workshops. This is stuff that I learned over the years to just try and put myself out there. So one of the things that I did was I started asking people about the things in their Zoom backgrounds. And at first I felt creepy, like a creepster, like what's going on in your background there? And of course yours is blurred. I felt so creepy. I'm like, they're going to think I'm like, but I found that they loved it.
Oh.
And because nobody has ever asked them about these things before.
Oh.
And finally, I find myself, I can't help myself because there's so many interesting things. And what I started doing this in, my little Scrum Master group meetings. And then I started doing it in the Agile coach meetings, where these people are like all business. And they're sitting there talking about their awkward stuff, like the weather. And I'll be like, what's the picture you have in the background?
I love it.
And they'll be like, oh, and then they start talking, right? And then somebody's like, I swear to you, somebody gets up out of their seat, goes in the room and says, look at this photograph that I took.
Oh.
It was on my wall over there, and started telling the group about their photography passion. And then I'm just looking at this, and it changed the whole direction and energy of the meeting.
Wow.
And it was just because I had the courage to ask this silly question, like, what's that panda picture in the background? And it turns out it was like a Banksy
cool
reproduction, right? But my point is, I had to go and facilitate a really tough conversation. Oh, thank you, Jasmine. Because there was a Scrum Master, a non-technical Scrum Master, struggling with her team, had a really nasty person that was shutting everybody down. Nobody wanted to talk. She's like, Patty, I need your help. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to come in and give a little bit of help, but I also want to train her to do it herself. So I went in there, and we were going to do this, big team retro thing. And I'm like, I don't know these people. I'm waiting for this guy to identify himself as the jerk. Right. And so I just started telling this awkward moment before the meeting starts. I just start yammering about my weird stuff. I'm like, oh, I live in Charlotte in a high rise, and look what's going on outside my window. There's like WWE tractor trailers because I live by the Spectrum Center. Right? And I just started talking about this. And then I said, oh, so-and-so, what's something that nobody knows about you? Share it to the group. Right. And then it was a little awkward at first, but then we got to the guy. And I just knew, I mean, he was like, right. And I'm like, and I'm thinking, he's sitting there talking like this, and I'm thinking in my head, right? Because your mind starts going, and I'm sorry, I'm going to curse. I'm like, oh my God, shit, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do here? I got to turn this team around. I don't know what I'm doing. And meanwhile, he's talking and I'm nodding, and I'm just like, oh my God, what do I do about this? Like, I got to get this team on the same page, right? This is my responsibility to take this nastiness and turn the conversation to something productive amongst the team. Because right now they're just talking at me. So this guy's yammering on, and I'm looking in his background, and I see snow, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to ask him. I'm going to put myself out there, and I'm going to ask him. And I said, hey, is it snowing in your background? It looks like I may be imagining something, but I feel like there's a blizzard in your window. And he's like, oh yeah. And he turns his computer and he starts talking about the snowstorm and showing like his snowman that his kids built. I swear to God, this guy starts talking about this, and the whole energy of the room changed. And we had this, and then we were able to have a productive conversation, because it was like, psst, it deflated the room.
Oh, wow.
And then afterwards, the Scrum Master was like, I don't know how you did that, right? Because I met with her, debriefed afterwards. She's like, I don't know how you did that. And like, because I had the courage to like not be sidetracked by this guy's bad energy and his negative attitude. And I know he's the one that shuts everybody down. And I knew it was my responsibility to do something about it. And he was actually, incidentally, speaking of managers, he was a tech lead. So he was coming into the team and telling them what to do. And they would just like this, right? I'm going to do it because I'm intimidated by this guy. And it really changed. It changed the tone. We were able to have a lot of productive conversation, come up with action items. I followed up with the Scrum Master afterwards. She's like, we're taking action on these things. I said, the problem is not solved. You need to take the ball and run with this. And you need to put yourself out there and befriend this guy. And that's exactly what she did. She reached out to him. She's like, what's going on? Like, starts to have an open conversation with him. And he was talking about how he was stressed out, and the people above him were like cracking the whip on him. And all of this stuff just kind of came out, right? And I had to take a step back afterwards and say to myself, this is all because I asked the darn question about the Zoom background. So this is a long story, and I yapped a lot here, Karen, but it's something like that, which is something that I had to develop because I don't have a technical background. And this is what I stress to non-technical Scrum Masters. You got to figure out a way around that. But technical Scrum Masters struggle with this stuff too, because they're used to getting in the weeds and writing the code and telling people what to do, right? So they fall into that trap because they cannot help it. So did I answer your question?
It was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that story. First of all, I always like to ask those kinds of stories. And by the way, thank you for playing along, because I know I totally.
Yeah, that was like verbal diarrhea. I told you, this is not like practiced.
Well, and it's so not practiced that like I totally threw you under the bus and was like, I have a question for you. And so thank you for playing along. But I think hearing those kinds of stories, you know, you and I said earlier so many times, I know it's easier said than done, or I know in a perfect world or whatever. And I think hearing those stories helps people sort of find, oh, well, maybe my thing could be this. So like, not that everything's about an icebreaker, but, you know, one of my favorite things is what was your first concert? And if you didn't go to a concert or a show or something event oriented, because that gets people talking. Someone else who does more formal icebreakers creates all these different like little badges, and you don't have to choose one of those badges, but just something that tells something about you that you can't see by looking at me. So grew up poor, middle child, single parent, only child, like, I don't know, any of the like kinds of things. And that's an icebreaker that she uses to sort of recognize that there's more to us than what you can just see. So again, it doesn't have to be about icebreakers, but finding those little things that you can pull out of your back pocket. So if you're in those conversations or working with someone that you're struggling with, and you can like throw that card down to like change the temperature in the room, knowing what that is for you can be really powerful.
I'm looking at our time. I'm like, we could probably talk for like 10 hours. I'm like, it is 6:17. And first of all, we didn't get to all the questions I had. But I think there was a lot of good stuff in here regardless. So with that being said, I want to turn this over to the audience and give them an opportunity to ask some questions, especially if we didn't get to the ideas about, okay, I have a manager that acts like this. What do I do? I've been in this situation with a manager. What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to be a manager and I'm not. What do I do? So let's open for the audience. Ahmed, you have some, I see you have your hand up. So we'll call on you first. So go ahead.
Yes, good evening, guys. It's been a very insightful section. I've been having fun here. Listen to you, Patty. You've been dropping the mic on almost everything. Yes, I just have a question. I think it's a little bit off, topic, if you guys won't mind. I started a new role like yesterday, and I joined this team, and you guys wouldn't believe what I ran into.
We believe it.
It's completely off my expectation. I don't even know where to begin with as we speak. So
do you have like one specific thing? I know it's like a Pandora's box.
Right. So I do have some more specific. I just want to, kind of give you a background of what a situation like, then ask for your advice, you guys just guide me on how I could approach my problem. I mean, that's why I'm just, creating the premise a little bit. And trust me, I wouldn't bore you out. I'll make it as, as fast and as concise as possible as I can. So technically speaking, long story short, no structure in place as such. They don't have a cadence. That backlog they have backlog of features with stories of like 4 or 5 years ago and going to like 200 something features in there. They don't even know how relevant it is to the present, impacts they're creating to the business customer right now, or even it's relevant or they don't even know what to do with it. And then you could tell they trying to do that. A lot of move around is going on. They trying to, transform and all of that. And so it's more of like I started with a support, maintenance team. So they working with the application and development teams and all of that. So all in all, what I observe is that they have some sort of like a governance issue as an impediment, as an issue. But however, they've identified the need to go to transform fully. So in the view of all these issues, and plus some other things I haven't mentioned yet, on a call today, I try to just to test run, what the tempo is going to be. I kind of chime in on some kind of process reviews and how we could start cleaning things out a little bit. And the director told me well, she would love all those things, but her home boss may not be open to it. That she don't know what to do about that, but I should just wait around. It's my second day, I should just wait around and, just to observe and learn a little bit more. So that sends a signal to me like there's the war ahead of me to fight. And I don't even know. And when I tuning this call, I see how you guys are just making huge problems so it was very simple to solve. And then I thought like, maybe I should bring it to your notice and see if you guys have one or two things to share with me as far as how to facilitate their or support their, transformation effort and where to begin things from. Because right now they just say, just sit back and watch yours. A lot of things is going on and so that's my question. What advice, what not, do you have any tips for me, what I can do and all of that? Thank you.
Karen, you want to take that?
Yeah. So you want our magic wand and we're going to wave it and all good. I think so. There's a couple of different things I thought as you were speaking through the story and talking to that director. So one thing that I've seen be helpful is as part of an onboarding plan, one of the outcomes of your first 90 days is what have I heard and what have I learned? Because that then leads into, and maybe what do I recommend? But that way you've opened the door to say, hey, my first 90 days are all about listening and learning. But at the end, like I'm going to share what I've seen because that's why you hired me, is to like help improve some of these processes or make some recommendations. It also gives you a timeline where you're giving yourself permission to say, I can't change this yet because I have 90 days to think about it. And you'll learn what I call what's precious and not precious. So there may be some things that, as horrible as they may be, like the CEO loves it, there's just don't touch it because you're not going to win that battle. That's precious. There are others. Yeah, there are going to be other things though that as you get to know the company and the people and the organizational dynamics, you may go, but I bet I could get something done over here. Or maybe if I get the small win, that will build some trust. And then maybe I can do something from there. So I think that 90-day window also gives you the time you need to learn about some of these organizational things. And you're sort of setting them up to say, this is what I'm doing. I'll talk to you again in 90 days, sort of. So it gives both of you permission to kind of like have that conversation, like 60 days, 90 days, whatever the right plan is for you.
Right. Thank you very much. And thank you. And I my takeaway from I think one of the things you said, which is powerful, is that I tend to approach things incrementally, but being the second day, I don't know who is who. They all seem to portray to be very open and willing to walk around and stuff. But just to test run why, just to connect to why without necessarily engaging them individually or collectively, just to test run why do you guys have this kind of mess in place? Excuse my language. And that's why I had to, come in there indirectly today. And she pushed back indirectly immediately, like, oh, like my boss is gonna ask for my head. And so but whatever solution we need to do, you just stay back, watch, observe, and take your note. Ahmed, we're gonna have to bring you on board, and whatever solution you're gonna have to provide to so many things, process or whatever, we're gonna have to sit and talk about it. That's to tell you that the kind of behavior existing around and no psychological safety, not even with my own boss. And I also recall that she mentioned something about they don't want to push a particular initiative that would lead to their customers, bumping heads as far as priority is concerned. I want their features pushed done first and not and all of that. Oh, I see. I'm beginning to observe and I'm taking notes of that. And so with what you said, I think it's going to be very useful for me to really just sit back and observe and take my notes. And I'm open to any more recommendations, advice anybody in the room here might have. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Karen, I would agree with everything you said. And it goes back to, you want to go in and you want to be useful, and like they're paying you all this money and it's uncomfortable to sit there and look and watch and ask questions. But you also, like Karen, what you said earlier today, you need to put yourself in those people's shoes. And if somebody came at you and said, you have all these problems, I got to fix them, this is what you need to do, how would you respond to that? So if you get to know them, it's like any relationship. If you get to know the person and talk to them and say, what's wrong? Like, what's going on? And learn and hear that perspective from everybody. Then you can start asking really great questions to help them understand that they need to start solving their problems. Yeah. Great question. Let's see. We have a few minutes left. Femi, I know your hand was up, so go ahead and ask your question.
That's okay, no worries. Thanks, Patty, and thanks to guests as well. A couple of questions. So what do you do if you have a manager who doesn't understand the coaching stance, where you basically get elicit, solutions from the team and wants you to like crack the whip and tell the team what to do and all that? That's one. Where you have team agreements where you're encouraging the team to, first of all, remove impediments themselves and only escalate to you if they can fix it. And basically it's micromanaging, is asking for retrospective action items, that kind of scenario. What do you do with that without appearing confrontational?
Great question. Karen, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah. So one thing that I've seen sometimes help is so I guess I'd have two reactions. One is it worth having a one-on-one conversation with that manager to reset expectations of your role, their role, everybody's roles? And doing that one-on-one first might be more helpful, because it's that safety piece, right? Like, I'm just talking to you. I'm not talking in front of the team. Like, let's you and I hash this out first, and using I statements. So it feels like to me that we're not on the same page, or I worry that your expectations of this role are different than my expectations, or like, so using it on like, this is how it feels to me, versus, I'm not saying you would literally say it this way, because I'm sure you're kinder than this, but like, stop telling me what to do. You do your job. Let me do mine. Right. Like, and again, I know you wouldn't say it that way, but like, it feels like to me, blah, 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 or from my perspective, blah, 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 blah. And having that one-on-one conversation might help break down some of the barriers. If they are not interested in that, they disagree with you, they're just not on the same page. I have seen like teams do some team charters where as a team, you come up with some ground rules, what everybody's role is, what's the mission of the team, and like sort of put together this team charter where, and then everybody signs off on it. Is like, yes, I agree with this. Yes, I'm bought in. Yes, I'm whatever. And I don't know the dynamics of your organization, but if all of this is failing and you still have a manager that is not a good partner for you, I also believe, and let me rephrase that, in organizations I've been in, I've seen Scrum Masters who are also coaches to the leadership team. So like going to the CTO and saying, I would love your advice with this particular person. I'm struggling with this person, would love to get your perspective. Or offer to go with the manager, say, hey, it feels like we're not on the same page. Can we talk to the CTO together? But as having other conversations with their boss, again, either together, which I think is always best, but if they're pushing back on everything, going to them, because you're a coach to the CTO too. And again, depending on your organization, but sort of philosophically.
Yeah, and I would also add in there that managers, as well as a lot of people, don't understand what the Scrum Master role is. They don't understand what you're doing there, and they may make it up in their head. You know how human beings make stuff up, and the stuff that we make up in our head is usually not good. So when, companies say we're going agile, or we're going to do Scrum now, and here's all these new people that are going to help us, people get threatened. But more than that, they're afraid for their job, because managers don't understand how they fit into this framework. They don't understand how they fit in this methodology, because historically they just come in there and they tell everybody what to do. That's not what an agile organization or a Scrum team is. So then where does that leave them? That may be something you need to help them work through, or their manager needs to help them work through that.
Yeah.
But it always comes down to people are afraid that they're going to get axed.
Yeah.
And once you understand that that's what most people are thinking, your approach to them changes so much.
and they bring their past with them. So I don't know how long you've been working with this person, but they may have had a really bad experience with a previous Scrum Master. Maybe I'm projecting from my HR experiences, but like sometimes when I'm struggling to build a partnership with someone, it's because in their past lives, HR was this, or HR was that. And that's not what I'm trying to do with our partnership. And so sometimes it's that past that comes with them too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. I mean, to your point, is to understand what their pain point is or what they want and can work with them to achieve that. We don't have a team agreement, but that's not visible to this manager. But I've been there for 7 months now, and I get the impression that they're not used to my kind of Scrum Master who doesn't like to be a wallpaper, who actually wants to get the work done and protect the team and motivate the team and kind of help the team. So this whole idea of telling the team what to do, which I don't want to do, I would rather not. It's something strange to them. So good point. I think we should have that conversation about what exactly are my accountabilities and how she as my manager can fit into that. Great insights. Thank you.
Yep. All right, let's do one last question. Charisse has had her hand up for a while, and then we'll wrap it up.
Let me unmute. So I'm just totally brand new to this, and thank you, Patty and Karen. Is it accurate to say that a Scrum Master would be a combination of a life coach and an event planner? Or am I totally off?
I think an event planner would be more of a project manager.
Okay.
That would be, that's my first thought.
Because I'm trying to get the distinction, because from what I'm researching, project managers are more tell you what to do. Servant leader is more a Scrum Master. Like, you're a guide and a partner, not a dictator.
Right.
Is that right?
Right? A Scrum Master kind of helps people interact with each other, where a project manager is responsible for telling people these are the things that you need to do to complete the project.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, Patty.
Karen, did you want to add anything to that from your perspective? And
Just
you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. Just real quickly, I was just going to say, I think more and more as people have to interact with humans, the life coachy piece of it really does come into play. Because think about everything that Patty just talked about. It was helping people get safe. It was helping people get comfortable with each other, build trust, and pulling it out of them. So whether it's like literally life coach, but like definitely that coaching aspect, I think is really key.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Patty.
All right. Well, I do want to be respectful of everybody's time, including our guest. Feel free to follow up with either one of us on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to share their LinkedIn URL in the chat, everybody connect with everybody, because that's what this is about, building community. I don't know, Karen, any last words?
Hi, Patty. I quickly, I don't know if you guys have like 1 or less than 1 minute for me just to quickly chime in on what you guys shared with Femi regarding this problem, because I had something similar exactly with my previous role. So my approach has been that I always try as much as possible to connect with people's why. Connecting to their why is very, very resourceful. Get to know what motivates different behaviors within the construct of your team, even individually, helps you get to the root of the problem and helps you identify the sequence of approach and identify where to take things from. Part of the things I do is, I may not necessarily put myself out there like I have any idea to improve situations, most especially when I know you might potentially give me a pushback or, come up with some pushback, behavior or something. I might just put it as if I want to learn, just walk me through the process. Let me know why we have to do this way. And it kind of open rooms for some more conversations as to maybe it's fear, they're scared of, just like Patty said earlier, or people just don't want to get fired. Like in the case of my director that I shared earlier, she's obviously scared, and they have targets. People still working in a typical waterfall way, the typical ways, and when they have targets and they have commitments they've given and all these things, they want to meet up, and at the same time they want to go agile. So you want to seek buy-in, and the technique you want to use is for you to connect to their why first before you know how to begin to approach your solution of buy-in. Thank you.
That is a perfect way to end. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you everybody for coming and participating. Thank you to Karen. Again, so excited that you were able to come.
Yeah, this is amazing.
Of course, we could keep talking forever, but we want to make sure that we're respectful of the time box here. Yes, our Scrum Master Power Hour meetings are on Tuesdays, same time, same place. I send out a reminder every single week. So every Monday, I send a reminder out to your email with the Zoom link. So you will be notified in case you were wondering about that. Well, all right, folks, I'm going to sign off here. I will clean up the recording and I will mail that out. I usually try to do it by Thursday. So in 2 days, it should show up in your inbox. And you can watch back all this goodness, and then all the folks that couldn't make it will, of course, be able to partake in the goodness as well. All right, well, thank you, Karen. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. It was nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you. Enjoy your dinners and have a great Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.